Total devastation. This is the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Trees uprooted and snapped. Homes and businesses blown apart and flooded. People's lives turned upside down, forever changed.
My community, which is St. Benoit Parish, is just completely gone.
It's very hard to know what it was like before and see what it's like now, seeing, my hometown totally, basically destroyed.
The Baton Rouge switch became home, literally, to an influx of Verizon Wireless volunteers from all over the country, sleeping on air mattresses in hallways and in RVs and buses in the switch parking lot. These professionals shared meals, as well as responsibilities for keeping the network viable, putting in 18-hour days every day.
When I arrived at the switch facility in Baton Rouge shortly after the storm, I expected it to be very quiet. I expected our employees to be off dealing with their own personal situations. What I found instead was a roar of activity, incredible energy and commitment and dedication from our team members, headlong into the recovery efforts immediately after the storm.
I've been working since day one, so I evacuated to here before the storm, and I've been here ever since. My house is 8 feet underwater, so I no longer have a residence at this point, but Verizon Wireless has been setting up RV camp, the displaced employees like myself and their families. We will be in there temporarily until we can see what's going forward with our housing.
This is one of the only communication networks that's up. Landline is having a tough time, so wireless is where everybody goes during these times.
We are keeping the Verizon vehicles moving. We're keeping our contractors moving. We're making sure the power is up to provide service for our customers.
With the amount of emergency services people, restoration people coming from all over the place, we saw the traffic double the normal traffic that we normally see in Baton Rouge. And we had to not only work on restoring the network, but also at the same time growing our existing network to support that extra traffic.
By allowing us to use the 50 phones they sent us, it expanded our operations tremendously on who we could reach out and contact. Verizon helped the whole community of New Orleans out just by having those 50 phones.
I think the most important thing to the customers at the time was that this was their lifeline. Many of these customers had no landline phones, they had no communication with the outside world other than their cell phone. So sometimes the first call they were able to make to their loved ones was on our cell phones.
Outside the confines of the Baton Rouge switch, our technicians employed standard means of visiting troubled cell sites, as well as some less conventional. The U.S. Army, knowing the importance of our network, offered us an aerial tour on a Black Hawk helicopter to examine troubled sites that were inaccessible from the ground.
That's the first tower we'll look at. No other towers around, and we get an idea what you want. So we're going to do an aerial shot and look at the structure damage as far as the tower, cell sites, and access roads to and from the towers. I've been in New Orleans probably the last 4 or 5 days, viewing sites and seeing the damage and trying to restore everything, as soon as possible. But some towers we had visited is just a total loss due to the flooding and winds.
It makes you feel good knowing that these people can make phone calls, and basically they cheer for you when you ride down the street sometimes. It does give you a sense of accomplishment.
Back on the ground, we faced challenges as we visited downed sites, some of which had been evacuated in haste and were still without power. On the streets of New Orleans, mud and debris were prominent, thanks to floods rising several feet high. Using whatever they could to clear a path for our trucks towing generators, our field technicians were determined to get as many sites back up as possible.
We were within 6 inches of this box. We really almost lost it. The phone lines would have been dead then, and there would have been no hope of getting it on the air even with power. But as it is, it looks like our linking leased lines are in good shape. So if we get power, we should get it back on the air. And this is a key site. This is downtown site.
It really is a great feeling. You've been working for 4 days, 5 days straight, and you're tired, you're worn out, and then you get that one email that just makes it all worthwhile, where somebody sends you that email, it's a customer that says, oh, you guys are great, you were the only people that were working, I was using your service at my house, I was able to contact my family, all my neighbors were using my phone. It just makes you feel great, and it kind of boosts your morale sometimes when you're down.
To the CEO of the company of Verizon, thank you. I got an email from you guys giving me 90 days of free service, and I will talk you to Puerto Rico through the storm, through Verizon, so thank you guys.
To reach out to our customers, we diverted V-teams to shelters where they could help those looking for loved ones. There they provided calling services, battery charges, and used text messaging as a way of communicating when calls could not get through.
I still don't have words for text messaging, what that did for us in the Astrodome. A dozen times a day in there, we were finally finding mothers, fathers, wives. I eventually got a call from a nurse at a hospital asking if I could help start locating a mother because they thought a baby had been separated from it. And I started making follow-up calls with the nurse about the baby when we found the baby in San Antonio. That was just because I had the phones with me there.
So tomorrow, where are you going? San Antonio.
This is News 42.
Verizon Wireless is offering free calls to hurricane victims at all local stores. And Verizon customers can also make a $5 donation to the Red Cross by sending a text message to a to-help on their cell phone.
Although several of our stores sustained damage, we refused to let that stop us from servicing our customers and those who wanted to become our customers.
The Slidell store was damaged in the flooding that took place. In order to serve the community here, we brought in an RV that you see behind me here last night, and we've been selling phones and dealing with whatever issues arise today.
I went to church last night, and I have a lot of friends that have Verizon, and they're like, oh, they're just taking such good care of us. And they either gave like 1,000 extra minutes or something through the storm, and I just like to hear that Verizon just stepped up and offered something. And I passed up the other stores because of all the good things I heard, that I was like, I know there's a Verizon somewhere on Gauze, and then I saw this one here.
We're reporting an awful lot of numbers from our competitors. Lots of folks have come in saying that their phones just haven't worked, and we're rectifying that for them.
I had a lady that was a grandmother of a couple kids, and she had the grandchildren with her, and her and the grandchildren had fled the area right in the early onset. But the mother and her brother had stayed behind. And she called in, she was trying to check her voicemail messages and wasn't able to. And she wasn't aware that since she was in an extended area, because she had gone to a different area, that you can't check them by dialing the star 86 send. She needed to call the cell phone number and press the pound key to interrupt it. She got confused, and I said, well, would you like for me to stay on the line while you do it? She goes, oh, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. And the messages started playing. Well, the first message was from her daughter that she hadn't heard from since the hurricane had struck. And so that was really neat. And then the next message was from her son-in-law also, so she found out he was okay because they weren't together. And then she got the message from her brother that he was okay because he was still down in the area. And then there was a couple more messages from him again because she hadn't been able to check her messages for about 3 days. And so it was just really touching. I stayed on the line with her because I didn't want to interrupt her with what she was doing. She was listening to that, and it just wasn't appropriate for me to say, ma'am, I need to get off the phone right now. And so I ended up hearing the messages at the same time she did. And so after it was over, we both had a good cry, and then she just thanked me immensely. She was just so thrilled because she finally knew that her family was all okay.
It is my privilege to thank the Houston Gulf Coast region. As you know, these storms were unprecedented, and so was your response. When I think of the entire region, I think of all those departments who responded. First and foremost, I think of network. Not only the network team from the South area, but the network team from across the country and their terrific response and innovation. I think of the sales operations, rebuilding the stores, staffing them. I think of human resources, making sure all of our employees were accounted for, and then coming up with creative ways to house even our employees that were affected. I think of the customer service department and working overtime and coming back when Houston was allowed to come back and showing up for work. And I think of supervisors who came on their days off and who worked around the clock. So for all of you and the effort that you have done, thank you very much. You make Verizon Wireless what we are today.